Hello, everyone. It's Charlton, and I wanted to talk once more about the missing Iowa student, Mollie Tibbetts, who's still missing, and it's over a month now. It's August 21st. It's late, so it's 2:30 in the morning, and there's just a couple of new pieces of news that aren't terribly revealing, but they're just part of the story. So the father, he, he had to go back to work, so he did return to Oakland, and I believe it's Oakland where he's from. I believe he's a marketing executive. I looked him up. I saw him on LinkedIn, and he is a marketing executive. That's where he gets some of his media savvy from. And he's done an absolutely commendable job. The whole family has of keeping Molly's name in the press and keeping the story alive. Because the more they can do that, the better chance they have of just getting more and more exposure and just getting somebody to think of something or see something. And so, but I think that's where some of his skills come from in terms of using the media to his benefit to try to get his daughter back. So, but he did have to return. He brought his other kids to college. I believe at least one of his sons, Rod Tibbetts, told TV9 he feels ambivalent, but it wasn't really his choice and probably for the best. He said law enforcement has been encouraging the Tibbetts to all return to their day-to-day lives and leave them in charge of the case. Rob Tibbetts said he moved his sons into their college this week, and she was on their minds. That's because they passed by where Molly was going to move in. As bittersweet as the thoughts were, he's still confident they're going to bring her back home, and she'll pick up from where she left off. I still feel that way. We all feel that way. That's why it's difficult for me to be knowing there's a good chance that we're going to bring her home, said Rob Tibbetts. I want to be there when she arrives. So he's still hopeful, and also Rob Tibbetts said he's coming back the moment there's a development on the investigation and wants to be an active participant in any search. So he still believes she's going to come home. And I have mixed feelings on that. There's definitely times where I think she is, and but as the time goes by, it gets obviously more and more worrisome as each day that goes by. So another development that I did see. It's just a piece of sort of housekeeping information, but it is new and it's Radar Online again. They had that big story about the killer. Somebody, they had a source close to the investigation that said, it was somebody that knew Molly and that he had been observing the search, and part of the search had been at the vigil, and that none of that had been confirmed. I'm not here to discuss that, but they have supposedly spoken with the boyfriend, Dalton Jack, and that he revealed to them. And I personally, I don't think Dalton Jack has anything to do with this. I just have no suspicion of him whatsoever. Um, and that's my feeling, and I'm fairly certain I'm right on that. So, but he spoke with them, and supposedly he took a lie detector test. He took a polygraph, and he passed. So, and I don't know when he did that, but that was news to me. So it says that the high school sweetheart of missing Iowa College student Mollie Tibbetts says he took a lie detector test when questioned by authorities and passed. Radar Online has exclusively learned. I think he told them. Dalton Jack, however, is unsure if he is a person of interest in the disappearance of the 20-year-old Iowa State University student. Um, I don't think he is though. That one statement in this report is the one that confused me because I don't think he's a person of interest at all. And but anyways, and this is only from the 19th. It's not an old article. It's just like 2 days old. It's the 21st, but it's after. It's 2:30 in the morning, so it's just the day before yesterday. So, but he does go on to talk a little bit more about it. They got to clear all their bases. They got to start eliminating stuff before they start narrowing in. I understand that entirely. If they need to check me out or anybody else out, they'll pretty much check you off the list. I'm more than willing to comply, and I believe them totally. Being kept in the dark by authorities isn't unusual in this missing persons case, which has captivated the nation. And it says authorities consider her disappearance after going jogging around 7:30 p.m. suspicious. Nothing in the world would make me happier than for her to be walking through the door right now, Dalton told Radar. When asked who administered the polygraph test, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, or FBI, Dalton couldn't answer. He said, I don't know who it was. He admitted, I don't know what department it was. I don't know what I'm allowed to tell you on that situation and what I'm not, because obviously they didn't make it public. With this being an ongoing investigation, we will not be discussing any investigative information at this time, a spokesman for the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation told Radar. Meanwhile, Dalton insisted he was going to help find his girl. When asked about a theory that alleges a villain is holding Mollie, the determined boyfriend was reminded of another friend and the horrors he inflicted on unsuspecting victims. And then he goes on to talk about John Wayne Gacy, the guy who was a clown, dressed up as a clown for charity events, and was a serial killer in Illinois. I don't know much about him. I've seen him mentioned in the comments a couple times. So that's pretty much the story there. And then I just want to talk about an additional theory that I've kind of clung to recently. That's a little different than things I've discussed before. And excuse me. So it has to do with this map, finding Mollie, and these five red shaded areas. And I've watched a little bit of Wendy Lou has told me about another guy who does live streams, really long live streams, like 2 and 3 and 4 hours. I already forgot his name. I think it's Hayes, Billy Hayes. I want to say. If I got that wrong, I apologize. And he's got some pretty sophisticated, cool tools, and he seems like a smart guy and a reasonable guy. Just kind of systematically and thoughtfully going through things. Tracing her path possibly. And I'm not necessarily doing that here. I'm just saying I used some of that information, and that kind of got me thinking about things. So, I definitely focused in on this Bear Creek thing. You don't see this here. In a Fox News report, I don't even have it up. This circle actually has Bear Creek running through it. And Bear Creek runs the length here. Eventually empties into the English River, which eventually empties into the Iowa River, which I think eventually ends up emptying into the Mississippi River eventually. And that has no consequence. I'm just letting you know. I was just checking the flows of the different rivers and which directions they flowed, because I was having sort of pretty sort of silly ideas of somebody using a kayak to travel through the creek, and I don't think that anymore. I just don't think you had any kind of time for that. Or basically something that occurred to me that I thought was significant, and I think this one here, which has the car wash in it, and this was mentioned in the press conference. Not necessarily the car wash, but it is mentioned here, car wash on the evening of July 18th, in between 5 and, they asked in between 5 and 10, did anybody see Mollie or see something in any of these shaded areas on July 18th between these hours? Okay. But they mentioned in the press conference somebody that maybe had recently washed their car or recently taken their car to a mechanic, but they mentioned recently washed their car. They didn't bring up the car wash in the press conference, but here it is in this circle. And there's a surveillance camera on there. At least I saw in a report there is, and it looks like there visibly is one, as well as the TA, Travel Centers of America truck stop. I'm certain is fitted with surveillance cameras, and that's here. But this also could have been part of Mollie's jogging path. She may have jogged right by here. The security camera maybe picked her up, and that's maybe why this circle's here, because this is just one place where they know she was during those times because it's on the camera there. That's a possibility, a very good possibility, actually. And I think that's, I'm sorry, I forget the dude's name. I think that's what Hayes was sort of saying is that it's very possible she jogged by there. And it's quite likely he's right. But I had a slightly different idea. I did. And, well, partly because they bring it up in the press conference about somebody who recently washed their car. And obviously a lot of times in a situation like this, you might be thinking they're washing their car because they are trying to eliminate evidence, and eliminate, very fine evidence like DNA, things like that, like bleaching it and, just scrubbing it to the point where you can't pick up anything. But I don't think, I mean, that's not what a car wash, that's not what I thought of when I thought of a car wash. I thought of something else. I thought of like, a car that was just super muddy, and the reason I thought of that is because I had this idea that, and let me kind of come over here to the map. I had this idea that, and another person was saying this in the comments. A lot of people have different, theories of whether she was possibly taken while she was jogging. There's been plenty of times where I thought that is the case, that she was taken on the road. There's also, because there's other elements of this, there's times where I thought she had to go back to the house, because reportedly she was on her computer into the night. There's the red shirt. There's the Snapchat picture of her supposedly indoors. The boyfriend believes he opened it around 10 o'clock p.m. that night, the 18th, but that doesn't mean she sent it that time. But presumably it would be around somewhere, in that time, of an hour or so, or a couple hours at least within the time that he opened it. But supposedly she was indoors. So, I mean, basically, the dogs were the dogs were in the basement. That would lead you to believe that she wasn't home. But supposedly she was on her computer. And, so, and in the town she lived in, I mean, I've seen at least a couple people say this, not many, but, that in that town, if something had happened on the road, somebody would have seen it, in broad daylight. Somebody would have seen something. And even if there was just a strange car, that because it's such a small town, they would notice a car out of place, or, you know. So, I mean, basically, let me just jump right to the point. The point is, I kind of had this thought that she was taken at the home, and my thought was that somebody maybe planned this out pretty well, and that somebody just really somebody chose Mollie specifically for many reasons, and part of it's because of who she is, because she's this like really nice woman, nice Christian woman, this really sweet person, and somebody really, I think, like chose her, like for that reason, because they thought she would be like a good partner, like a good wife almost, and so. But I think what I was thinking is that the person planned this out, and so it's also, I do believe, whether it's somebody that specifically honed in on her, and had been watching her for some time, which I think that's what it is, or it had to be somebody that knew her to some extent, even if it wasn't like close to her. They had to know that her boyfriend was going to be away. That's a huge thing. There's no doubt in my mind that whoever did this, knew that she was alone, and that she was staying at that house alone, and that and knew her routine at least some. Okay, and I actually think it is somebody who had been keeping their eye on her for some time, and then had learned her whole routine, recently or this summer. So, and had planned this out. And basically, what I'm saying is, I think that the person may had like thought it through and had parked their car at a much distant location, even off road, pulled it off road into somewhere where it ended up getting really, and drove it a little while. I mean, not like far, but somewhere out of sight where no one would ever see it, and that he could basically leave there and then walk to the house from through the cornfields where no one would see him, even if it was daylight out. Um, and then just sit there and wait for her to come home, from the jog. And it could have been, I don't know, the timing's not the greatest. I'm already starting to see flaws in my theory, but I don't know. I don't. All right, so let me continue. And this theory is not the greatest. It's not. It's already breaking down even me trying to describe it. So, which is all part of, sort of this exercise kind of helps, you talk it through and you realize that it's flawed, But let me just keep going because I had this strong feeling that the car wash was about cleaning off the abductor's car because it was parked in a very, in an off-road place, where it can't be seen, and just muddy, with some kind of four-wheel vehicle, and he left it there, and in order to walk to the home, from the back. The home is like right here, and I mean, this is Brooklyn. The one pink circle is here. Here's the D&M car wash. Here's the TNA, the Travel Centers of America truck stop. Let me put myself down here. And this is one of the other circles here. This is Bear Creek that runs like right there. And the other circle is like right here. And there's just like some houses there. There's not a lot of houses around here, and I don't really need to go through right now where exactly all the little houses are. It doesn't really matter for this discussion. So, I mean, basically, let me just give you the broad overview of what I'm saying. And I'm saying that somebody knew Mollie's routine and had this idea, this plan to do this, and thought it out pretty well, and knew, So Jack leaves on Monday, and he knows he goes away, I guess, each week, something like that, And now he's got a couple days to do this, and so he chooses Wednesday night and parks the car somewhere off-road where no one can see it, and walks through the corn to the house and sits in the house and waits for her to come home. He may have even, sat in the cornfields, let her go jogging, then knows she's coming back after that, then goes in the home and just waits for her to come back. And as soon as she comes back in from jogging, he takes her. And at that point, he's still in the planning stages, in terms of he wants to make sure that anyone who's going to speak to her for the rest of the night, thinks she's safe. And that's what the Snapchat's about. And then he maybe even sort of like forces her to send him a Snapchat, and make sure that she sends, that sends the message that doesn't say anything, that she's in danger or anything like that. He oversees it. It's even possible that that's when, very quickly, when you pop your phone, you hit that button to make your apps come up, that the Twitter app was up, and she was able to quickly, maybe, just in a moment, pin that tweet, the pinned tweet that we were all talking about for the last two videos. So, but that's not what this video is about either. I just want to keep going on this kind of idea of what happened. And so then he just stays there until it gets dark, and then and that could explain the being on the computer. That does that intentionally, maybe. I don't know. It seems like a stretch. But the dogs never make it out of the basement. She never gets out of her jogging clothes, he grabs the red shirt, maybe, okay, um, and it just is just any red shirt of hers. It wasn't a choice of a work shirt, just happened to be out, and they leave out the back once it gets dark and go through the cornfields back to his car, and which is parked somewhere along the river or something, or off road in the mud. Now his car is just completely caked in mud, possibly, and because it had to be out of sight, he couldn't have anybody see it. And then he takes off, and and then he goes, you know, so the house was here. He goes back this way, and he doesn't just go right back into town. He circles around, okay, and maybe he goes, this is where one circle is. No, it's over here. Sorry. And he goes all the way over here, and then straight down. And maybe this is, uh, you know, he dumps the shirt. The red shirt. This is Highway 21 over here. Where and the pig farmer lives, and they were off, not on Highway 21. They're on a road off Highway 21 when they were looking for that red shirt. So this is because this is one of the other circles is here. So maybe he just chucks the shirt, okay, makes his way back. I understand this is not the greatest theory in the world, but it made some sense to me. Chucks the shirt, comes back here, heads back to town. This is all under nightfall. Okay, nobody's around by this time. This is whatever. I don't. That's another thing. It's supposed to be between 5 and 10 p.m. That to get all this done between 5 and 10 p.m. I agree is almost impossible. But and then goes back to the car wash to wash off his car, because he can't be if his car is caked in mud, that's going to stand out, and somebody's going to remember that. And wherever he goes, somebody's going to remember, I saw this car, it had tons of mud all over its tires, whatever. So, and then splits. Okay. Um, you know, I agree for all that to happen from 5 to 10 it's not possible. But you also have to, for anything, for any of all this stuff happening within that time frame is, is definitely, it's difficult to do, no matter whatever the theory is, whether it's my theory that I just laid out for you or some other theory, to cover all this ground, in the process of abducting a person from 5 to 10 p.m. is difficult to do. But it seems like, somebody had it designed, planned, because there's almost no sign of how this possibly, how they did it, and who did it. It's like it was very well thought out, and not just somebody, it's somebody that specifically chose her, and thought it out. And that's why I'm saying, like, they put the car somewhere, went up from behind to the home, waited for her to come home from jogging, maybe even saw her go jogging, then entered the home. It's unlocked, waited for her to come home. As soon as she walks in, takes her, it just says, it's that it began. But waits until nightfall, and just keeps her there until it's safe to leave. And that does the Snapchat. She puts her on, she's on her computer. She's not on her. He's making her do that to make it seem like everything's okay. I don't know exactly, but he needs to know before he takes her, that she's not going to be contacted again from somebody, from a mom, from a loved one, from her boyfriend, so that for the rest of the night he's in the clear. Okay, and that's what the Snapchat was for. And then maybe that's when the Twitter tweet got pinned. Goes back out in the dark to the car, walks through the cornfields with her, makes her come with him. Probably's got a gun, and goes to the car. Gets back in the car, has that shirt, grabs that shirt, that red shirt, so he can chuck it. And you know what? I almost forgot. Maybe he had done a sex registry search before he did this, and he knew of, Wayne Chaney, if he's registered. I don't even know if he is, but let me just play along, and and planted that there. Throws the shirt, and she's in the trunk of the car by that point. And throws the shirt in his vicinity so that the authorities would suspect him. Then circles back around, and that's where this is. Okay, here's Highway 21 right there, and he's near High 21. There's Guernsey right there, and Deep River is right is near there. It's not in the picture here, but it's in that vicinity. Heads back here, heads back to town to wash off his car, because it's a mess. You know, and then gets out of there. And that was my theory. It was I said Billy Hayes. It was Gray Hughes. That's who this dude is, who has the live streams about the Mollie Tibbetts case. But also, I was just my theory's not very good, not very good at all. But it is what it is. The problem is it would have been closed, if it was late at night. And here's actually a video of a guy who's just only, he's obviously very interested in this case, and, you know, um, I assume he would really like to see, Mollie found. So he's just got two videos around Brooklyn, Iowa. But he's driving by the the car wash right here. I'll show you just quick. And actually, you know what? It's got a truck and a boat right there. I think you can wash off the cars on the outside. Even though my theory is not that great, what is possible is that it's possible that the person, the abductor, said, "Where's a car wash?" to Mollie in town, and drove here. Saw it was closed and had to leave, but it maybe even got picked up on surveillance, just the car, being there at that time of night. And that's why the authorities, knew he still needed to wash his car. Maybe my theory is not so bad, actually. That kind of makes sense a little bit. But here's this video. I don't feel like unplugging. It's just going to create. Here I will. Unplug. Going down East 2nd Street right now. All right, man. That's the end of this video. And as soon as there's more information, new information, every day I think about this and look for the new stuff and just continue to think about it all day long. That's usually why I do these late at night. And as soon as I got more ideas or stuff to tell you about, I'll make a new video, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. I'll see you in the next video. Just hope Mollie comes home, man. Later, man.